Hello, today I'd like to go over chapter 4, subqueries. This is a variable. When it's as symbol followed by the declare, that means this is a variable. So declare do so declare is highlighted, and this is a variable, and you're assigning this value, the returning value, to this variable, and data type is integer. So this select statement will return integer value. You can simply run this one here. Then it returns the 11,077, and the value will be assigned to this as symbol max ID. So max ID is applied to this. So instead of doing this way here, you can do both ways. You can do equal, and you can say this. You can replace this part with this. I mean, you can replace this with this, and you get the same result. You can run this one here, execute, then you get this value here. So you can do creative programming using a variable, mixing with a query. Same thing here. When you have a subquery, this is the value, and you can apply to order ID. You can write this way, or you can write this way. So order and order ID is equal to whatever the value returned from this subquery. And if it matches, then this will be the value will return. So you can run this by itself like this, and it returns this. And so 11,077 is equal, whether it's equal to order ID, then it will display here. So you can run here, execute, then you see the order ID here. Okay? So you can do the dynamic comparison. On here, you have a subquery with this. If the last name is like the starting with the B, then it will return the employee ID. Run this one here. This returns only one record. So you can say equal sign and employee ID. That's okay. It will run successfully. There. So return all these records there, because all these records are orders are made with the employee ID equal to 5. Okay. Let's look at this one here. This will show some kind of strange error message here. It will say subquery returns more than one value. This case here, when you run this subquery, if it returns more than one value, you cannot use the equal sign and do the comparison, because when you use equal sign, that means it has to be, the value has to be only one value. But since the subquery returns two values, it will say error message. Same thing here. If it returns only one records, like this, returns no value, then what happens? Zero records. So it will not give you error message if it returns one or zero records. But if subquery returns more than one value, then you will see an error message. Let's look at this one here, multi-value subqueries. Um, it can get around by using in command instead of equal sign. So if it returns, oh, there's some errors here. Grab. So it returns two values here, just like before. And since you applied in here, it will not cause any errors. So it returns the values without any errors. So instead of using equal sign, use in command. You can also do the joining to, instead of having subquery like this, you can use the joining with employee ID and in the employee table and the sales order table. You join with the employee ID. This is another way to do that. And starting with the D, you get the same result. Here 166. Second returns 166. We run both. And first result set 166. If you scroll down, this one returns 166. So this is the same as above. Um, Instead of using this, I recommend using this. This is it will give you a better performance joining with this way rather than subquery like this. The same thing, the customer, uh, the value. So you run this and 13 records returned and you have in command. So you can run this and you can get all these records. So you can apply not just the employee ID, you can apply to country filters, work condition, and do the comparison. You can also have, if you do not want, if you want to exclude certain records, then you apply not in. So meaning opposite. So if it returns 1, 2, 3, all these values, you do not want the customers with not in these values, then you have not in command. So not in. It will opposite. The value must not exist in here in order to display here. That's what it means. Let's look at something here. Next one is just added a few records into this. How to create a table and insert records directly. So you have just create a table called orders, and with a column, just the order ID column. Now, if you run this part here, it will return 415 records. You can directly insert into this table by having insert into and name of the table. So this value, all these 415 records are inserted into this orders table. Okay. Select N from this. You can have a combination, conditional statements where and N is between this. So this is one subquery. Run this, then this is the value. You're picking the minimum value of order. And here, another subquery, which returns the maximum value this. So between these two values, in order to display the n from the numbers, it must fall into this. The value has to be higher than minimum value and lower than the maximum value, and not in this condition here. So none of these order IDs. Then it will display here. See all these values. So you can run the subqueries, you can run it inside subqueries and you get a better idea how it works. Minimum is a aggregate function and returns the minimum value. Max is a function that returns the maximum value of in this table called orders. How to join with the first table conditionally. Now we're getting into the little bit advanced. Um, you have table called sales orders table and order ID maximum order ID. But there's a conditional statement here. We're using the same orders table. This orders table is same as this. So why do we, this is alias name, AS alias 01, and the second one is the A2. But they are both referring to same table called sales.orders table. Why do I make this conditional statement joining with itself? Well, there are times you want to grab a maximum order ID per order, per customer basically. So when you run this one here, I'm grabbing the order ID, maximum order ID per customer ID. meaning what is the maximum order ID for particular customer. You can say this is max order ID per customer. So this customer's maximum order, because there are a number of orders made by this customer. Let's say 20 orders made by this customer, but I want to pick the latest order ID. Then this is how you do that. This is conditional. You link with customer ID, find what the customer ID is. Then you pick the maximum because max returns only one single value. So the in equal sign will work because aggregate function returns only a single value. That would be compared with this one here. You get the same flex statement there. Look at this one here. Select max order ID from sales orders table where customer ID is 85. So I'm doing this one here. You can see that both. What is the maximum value for customer ID 85? See on here 85, you get the maximum order ID for this customer ID 85. But this statement will give you only one record. But by having the joining like this way here, conditional statement, you can find all the customers. This customer's maximum value order ID is this. This customer's maximum order ID is this. And the employee ID can display those. So when you link using this way, you get more records set. Like here, you have 89 record set returned versus this bottom one, which returns only one record. Very useful and joining with like this way. You can also do how to calculate the each order value based on the total order per customers. There are times you want to generate a report, and this will give you order ID, customer ID, value, and also give you, because the subquery is right here, this is the referring to max value. Here, subquery, this will return max value, and this bottom one here returns the fifth column, percentage. So how does it work? You simply selecting from the orders value table, and you are grabbing what is the maximum value combining. So, oh, this is a sum. So you are combining all these here. Customer customer ID is this. So you're combining all these values that is equivalent to $4,273. So the customer made a purchase all these years. They spent this particular customer spent $4,273. And how many times did the customer buy? Six times. First time he purchased spent $814.50. Second time he spent $878, etc. All these. And on this last column, percentage is divide by this, divide by this. So it will give you a 19.02% of the first purchase. So you can apply the linking here, combining it, because this one is linking with customer ID and grabbing the total value, because I'm using the sum. Sum is aggregate function that combines all these values, 246. Same thing here. The next one is the customer ID 2 purchase of 4 times. First time is $88.80 and 4 times. So when you combine these 4, that is equivalent to this. And 6.33 is the percentage, which is this over this number will give you 6.33%. Very useful. You can simply easily generate a business report using these kind of queries. We're going to get to the exist, how to enhance the performance of a query. There's instead of using in, you can also use the exist. Exist will give you a little bit better performance. This is similar to before, except you're using and exist. So what it means is the country is equivalent to Spain and exist. Any records purchased here, run this, all these 4 records it shows up. What it means is that this customer has purchased at least one time. That's why in the orders table, we're doing the customer table, but this is pulling from the sales orders table. So what it means is that whether this customer purchased any item and the country is Spain. So you can also display on here. So you get the better understanding here. So it gives you the country equals to Spain because I used the filter country equals to Spain. But also this customer must have purchased at least one time. When someone purchases an item, the records will be stored in the orders table. So this will return at least one record. So that means any records returned from this query will make this one true. So there are 4 customers who purchased at least one time and whose country is Spain. So you can do the same thing, opposite condition, not exist, Spain. So that means customers who from the Spain who did not place any orders. That's what it means. So if it returns any records from this, then it will make a false because it says not exist. Run this, and there's only one customer who did not purchase any items, which is the customer number 22. You can add additional columns to clarify. Run this, then it says the Spain country is displayed. So you can add additional columns there. So previous next order. This one is a pulling from the sales orders table, order by order ID, but I placed the subquery in the header part. So if you run this part here, returns all these 830 records. So it will have a maximum order ID and it's pulling is another alias name, which is pulling from the same table, sales.orders table, and this is sales order.table, but alias name is 01, alias name is 02. What it means is that it has a condition 01, which is this first table, order is less than second one order ID. So what it gives you is what is the latest order ID for this particular customer. So here order ID is this, and it shows you the previous order ID is null. So what it means is that this customer order ID is this. But this customer never purchased before this because previous order is null. Null means it never so this customer purchased first time. That's why it does not show previous order ID. Let's look at this one. Customer 79. The current order is 10,249, and the customer previously purchased order ID is 10,248. So right before purchasing this, the customer purchased another order, the ID number is this. So that, this is the previous order, this is the current order. Same thing on other things. So make sure that you have, when you have less than sign, means the current order is less than the less than the current order ID, less than this, so it will grab the previous order. But since you're using the max in here, it will give you the maximum order ID, which is less than the current order ID. How to find the next order number then? Well, we will do the same thing similar to the above. Only difference would be you have this next order, and you have order ID is bigger than this, and you have a minimum. So all the order IDs higher than the current order, but there are a number of later orders there, like 20. Since this order, maybe if the customer made purchase like 5 more times, then it will return 5. But I'm using minimum, so we will grab the lowest order ID from that 5 orders. Running this, so you have this customer 79. It order ID is the 10,249. But what is the next order? The customer ordered right after this. The customer ordered this one here, which is the 10,250. The current customer ordered 2,000 this, but next one is this one here. So it will grab the minimum order ID sequential, right? How to calculate cumulative sales. So on here, when you select this statement here on top, I'm running both queries. So it will give you all these 3 records on the first query. Selecting from order total by year, it will give you 3 records. Now, when you run with sum and order year is less than this, see what happens. See 2002, the quantity is 9,581, and run query, so it's the total value for this year, because this probably the first year is doing the business. So that's why it made quantity 9,581. So that total that year is same as the left. But next year you have 25,489, and run quantity is combining these two values, then it is equivalent to this. Combining these three, the third year, 2008, it made the quantity this, and if we add these 3 numbers, that is equivalent to this. So this is nice report, business report. You can simply run a query like this, and you get the report. And you can easily copy this result set in Excel and send to managers or something, whoever requested the report. Null trouble. There's something special about null. What happens when you add null and compare using in? Okay, so let's look at this one here, not in. When you run this one here, it will return 2 records. Now, right after adding a null value into this table, only 1 record I'm adding. Run this, it adds only 1 record into this table, but it has a null value. The customer ID has null value. So what happens if you run the same query again? It returns 0 records, but there's no error shows up. So this is a strange. It happens because if you have a null value, one of the records is null value, then all the records will return null, because you cannot compare with a null. So null means does not exist. So even though there are 2 records there, it will not show up if you have in command with the null comparison. Same thing here, same. Now, compare these two. So there's no errors when you do comparison because it's not, there's no syntax errors. Null behaves the way it is. So not in equal to, it returns 0 records. But on the bottom one here, it returns 2 records, just like before. Why? Well, you're in subquery, you're excluding a record is not null. So it returns all the values, customer IDs with that null. So that's why it is able to compare it and return the records there. So using not exist, you can use that command. This one exist is like gives you a little bit better performance. So when you run this, you should get 2 records. So what happens? While you're joining with the customer ID with the customer sales.customers, this alias name is C, and the same table, well, orders table, alias name is O. So you're linking, joining these two tables using customer ID, but you says the not exist. Not exist will handle it. So meaning if the customer does not exist, then it will not display.